so that we can try to get this done. Have any of you read these before? Chronicles of Prydain. Okay, it's 5 books in the series. You might have seen the horrible Disney version of The Black Cauldron, which is a mixture of 2 different books in here, though it doesn't tell you it's a mixture. This is the first in the series. If you find that you like this, I strongly encourage you to read the other 4 because it just builds. Without saying more than that. It is loosely based, as the author says in the author's note, on Welsh mythology, but he takes some liberties with that Welsh mythology in terms of creating his own land of Prydain. And I want to begin with the author's note, where he says, last paragraph, Chronicle of Prydain is a fantasy. Kind of, duh. Such things never happen in real life, right? There is not a quote-unquote horned king in real life. There aren't these birds that have talons and beaks that eat humans and pick them up and carry them off and such. Or do they? He says. Most of us are called on to perform tasks far beyond what we can do. Our capabilities seldom match our aspirations and are often woefully unprepared. To this extent, we are all assistant pig keepers at heart. What does he mean by that? Okay, how many of you have actually started this? Because I know some of you may not have. Hopefully you have. You should be about halfway through. Taran, who's the name of a little boy at the beginning, we don't know his exact age, but he's probably somewhere in the range of 11 to 14. Somewhere in there, okay? He's an assistant pig keeper. He's not an assistant pig keeper as the novel opens. He's just a farm boy, okay? He gets the title of assistant pig keeper because he wants to be somebody, okay? So when Alexander says, most of us are called on to perform tasks far beyond what we can do. Well, when the novel opens, what is Taran actually doing? He and Call, his teacher, the other farmhand, are working on something. Call is trying to teach Taran how to make something. What is it?
Horseshoes.
Horseshoes. Okay? So he's learning smithying. How to be a blacksmith, essentially. He doesn't want to make a horseshoe. What's he want to make? A sword. Why? Why a sword? Why not a horseshoe?
He wants to be a knight or something.
He wants to be a hero. He wants to be a warrior. You can't be a warrior with a horseshoe unless you're going to throw it at somebody. You have to be pretty good aim. Okay? But you can be a warrior with a sword. From Call's perspective, which of the two is more practical? Sword or horseshoe?
Sword. Oh, I thought you meant the kid.
No, from Call, from his teacher's perspective.
Horseshoe.
The horseshoe. Why? Horses need to be shoed. Okay? There aren't any wars near Caradalbin, the farm that they live on. Swords aren't any good for farmers. I mean, yeah, you kind of can dig with them, but they're not designed for digging. Okay? So, most of us are called on to perform tasks far beyond what we can do. What's the task Taran at the beginning is called on to perform? Make a horseshoe. Notice he can't. He can't. So he tries to do something else. How good is he at sword smithing? Nope, sucks at that one too. Okay? What are the tasks he's going to be called on to perform? Well, we'll have to answer that question when we get to the end. But all throughout all 5 books, he has a set of tasks to begin with. Those are not the same tasks that he ends with. Okay? What our narrator, what our author is telling us here is that everyone has jobs given to them in life that they're not qualified for. So what do? Throw your hands up in despair? No. You try. You might fail. Good. What's the best teacher in life? Success or failure? It's failure every time. Because a lot of people succeed. You probably know people like this. Maybe you are people like this, where you've breezed on through school and you haven't had to try it all. And then you come to one class and it is a pain in the you-know-what. Because no matter how hard you work, you can never get that A or B. It's not clicking up here, or the professor's weird, or whatever the thing is. But it's no longer easy. Do you give up? Some do. Some people aren't here that are normally here. Every semester goes by and my classes whittle down from starting around 18 to 20 to I've had classes before that have ended with 8 that have started out with 20. And it's because I can't read that book. It's got 200 pages. Or I can't read that book. I've never read a book in my life. Okay? Whereas others have, I read books all the time. I don't like those books. Or I don't read books, I watch movies. Not going to succeed or are going to have a more difficult time. He then goes on. Our capabilities seldom match our aspirations. Our aspirations. What do you aspire to be? What do you aspire to do? Is it just, fulfill whatever your major requirements are? Is it just, tick off the boxes, get a job, etc., etc.? Or do you aspire to more than that? Shakespeare has in Twelfth Night, he has the line, and this isn't an exact quote because I'm going to mess it up because I've already forgotten it. Something about, some people are born great. Some aspire to greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Okay? Some are born great. What does that mean? He's talking about the nobility, royalty. They're born into privilege and power. Some aspire to be great. That is, they try to rise above their situation. And some have greatness thrust upon them. That is, they're not looking for greatness and it's dropped in their laps. Okay? What's Alexander talking about? Our capabilities seldom match that. So what do? We still stretch. We still strive. We still reach. Even though we are often woefully unprepared. Unprepared. You don't have the tools that you need. So what do? You make them up as you go. Okay? Anybody who's ever been in a quote-unquote survival situation, they don't usually have the tools that they need to survive. What do? They improvise. They figure out how. Okay? So he says, to this extent, we're all assistant pig keepers. Because Taryn, at the beginning of this novel, 11 to 14 years old, like I said, he doesn't have the capabilities he needs to survive. But in the course of the novel, about a year goes by, a little bit less. What happens to him? Well, he grows, first of all, both physically and mentally. Okay? But what else? He adapts. He adapts to the situations that he finds himself in. If you don't adapt, what happens? You die. If you don't adapt, you die. Period. Okay? So, we open and we see Taryn wanted to make a sword. Notice, just starts off with that bald-faced statement. Call, charged with the practical side of his education, decided on horseshoes. Okay? So, he tries to make a sword. He doesn't do a very good job. So we're going to skip a bunch. And Taryn goes off, talks to Dalbin, who is the old magician who lives at the farm that the farm is named for, Caer Dallben. Okay. And they talk about Iran, the Death Lord, and such. And bottom of page 8, top of page 9. Okay. They mention the Horn King, or Dallben does, along with Prince Gwydion. And at the bottom of page 8, Dallben tells Tyrryn, you can't leave Caer Dallben. Not for the time being, at least. Why? Because there's danger outside. The Horn King is kind of in the area for the time being. I think it will always be for the time being. It will be vegetables and horseshoes all my life. How old is he again? 11 to 14. What do a lot of 11-year-olds, and even up to 14, what do they want really more than anything? Freedom. What else? What does freedom come with? Louder. Being an adult. They want to be older. Why? So they have freedom. So they can do what they want. That's what he wants. He wants to be older so he can do what he wants. Okay? Dallben. There are worse things. Worse things than what? Worse things than vegetables and horseshoes. You set yourself to be a glorious hero? You believe it's all flashing swords and galloping about on horses? Well, yeah. Of course he does. What does he know of being a hero or being a warrior? Stories he has heard and read. What do we hear, for example, about great heroes? I mean heroes of literature, not, heroes of the Gulf War and Afghanistan and Iraq and all that. We hear only what?
Fun parts.
The fun parts. The heroic deeds parts. What do we not hear about?
The grit and grind.
The burying their friends part. The slugging through mud part. The going hungry for weeks part. The never having a change of clothes part. The stench part. We don't hear about that, right? But that's part of it. Okay? Dallben kind of hints at that. Okay? Tyrryn, what about Gwydion? What about Prince Gwydion? He's got this idealized fantasy of what this prince is like. I could be like him. No, out of the question. Why? I know if I had the chance. Just give me the chance. I could be heroic. In some cases, we learn more by looking for the answer to a question and not finding it than we do from learning the answer itself. In other words, in some cases, we learn, as he's going to rephrase this statement at the end, more from the seeking than the finding. It's the seeking that's important. Okay? So, he's been told, stay here. Next page, bottom, page 10 at the bottom. Call says, okay, you want to be something. Fine. Here, I'm going to make you something. From this moment, you are Tyrryn, assistant pig keeper. Assistant. Who's the pig keeper? Call. Guess what we find out about Call later on in the novels? He's a mighty warrior. Was a mighty warrior. Now, he's a farmer. He's a pig keeper. He's bald. Okay? So he's lost his glorious hair, He's bald, and he digs root vegetables. Potatoes and turnips. How glorious is that? Tyrryn, well, that's what I do now. That is, well, it's not a good title. I want something glorious. You just named what I already do. All the better. If you want to be something with a name attached to it, I can't think of anything closer to hand. In other words, you want to be something with a name attached to it, be what you are. Pretty easy, right? In other words, do what you're already doing. Earn a name there. You want to be a student? Be a student. Be the best damn student you can be. Now that's hard. Why? Because be the best you can be means you got to try. You've always got to push that envelope. Because only each individual knows if you're pushing the envelope or not. Okay? So they talk about the pig, Hinwin, famous pig, oracular pig, that is a pig that prophesies. Don't ask me how. We find out later. And the pig gets out. The pig not only gets out of its enclosure, it leaves the farm. Taryn's been told, don't leave the farm. So now he's stuck, right? He either has to go after the pig, break his orders, or leave the pig and tell Call and Dalbin, in which case the pig gets farther and farther away, and the pig is very important. They can't let the pig fall into the wrong hands. So he goes after the pig. Okay? And he sees what? Page 15. The Horned King, the very one Dalbin warned him about. Where? Like right outside the farm enclosure, wherever that is. Okay? So, he's rescued by a stranger, pages 16 and 17. And we're told, middle of page 16, the stranger had the shaggy, gray-streaked hair of a wolf. His eyes were deep-set, flecked with green. Sun and wind had leathered his broad face, burned it dark, grained it with fine lines. His face is wrinkled and tanned like leather from being out in the sun so much. Okay? His cloak was coarse and travel-stained. Stranger says, drink. You look as though I'm trying to poison you. It's not thus that Gwydion, son of Dawn, deals with the wounded. Taryn, you're not Gwydion. I know of him. How does he know of him? He's met him? No. He's heard stories of him. He is a great war leader, a hero. He is not. And then he looks at the long sword at the guy's belt. And he kind of imagines, well, only a great war leader and a prince could have that big long sword. Taryn drops to one knee and bows his head and says, Lord Gwydion, I did not intend insolence. Gwydion helps him up. Taryn still stared in disbelief at the simple attire and the worn-lined face. Why? From all Dalbin had told him of this glorious hero, from all he had pictured to himself, what had he made out of what he'd been told about Gwydion? What did he create in his mind? A magnificent figure. Okay? He created an idol of this character. And then what happened? He meets the real thing. And the real thing doesn't match up with the idol. And so Gwydion says, it's not the trappings that make the prince, nor indeed the sword that makes the warrior. Well, Taryn was trying to become a warrior by making a sword, right? It's not the sword. What is it that makes a warrior? It's in here. It's the heart. Okay? Notice, clothes don't make the man. The trappings don't make the prince, because he looks like what? Our modern day terminology. A homeless guy. His clothes are stained and tattered. So, Karen tells him who he is. And Gwydion says, what are you doing so far from home? Does Dalbin know you're in the forest? Is Call with you? He says, no. He goes, how do you know Call? He goes, I know Call and Dalbin well, etc., etc. Talks about Hinwin being out. Gwydion's like, what? Notice, he knows about the pig. Okay? So, Gwydion tells him about Iran and how Iran ensnares men with promises of power and such on page 19. And on page 20, he tells Terran, it would seem that we follow the same path for a little while. Terran is looking for Hinwin. Okay. Gwydion is looking for the Horned King. Their paths, notice they go like this, he says, for a while. In other words, at some point, we will diverge. You'll go your way and I'll go my way. Okay? So, later on, they find a place to camp, and we're told at the bottom of page 20. It had never occurred to him until now that a hero would sleep on the ground. Where did he think a hero would sleep? That he brings a mattress with him, a bed? He never thought about that. Why? Because he only thought of the heroic aspects of being a hero. He never thought of the daily aspects. Okay? So, Gwydion asks him, page 21, how long have you been with Dalbin? Who are your kinsmen? He says, I don't know who my parents are. Dalbin's never told me. I don't even know who I am. That is the theme of all 5 novels. Terran has to discover who he is. Okay? Gwydion, well, in a way, that is something we must all discover for ourselves. He means it differently than Terran does, however. Terran thinks discovering your genealogy will tell you who you are. Gwydion is saying your genealogy has nothing to do with who you are. Who you are is where? Is it to be discovered out there? No, it's in here. But it's how you interact with what's out there that you discover what is inside you. Is there a destiny laid on me, Gwydion asks, bottom of 21, that an assistant pig keeper should help me in my quest? He's kind of asking that facetiously. I have this great and glorious quest to kill the Horned King. Is it my destiny that an assistant pig keeper should aid me? But then he turns that around. Or is it perhaps the other way around? Or is it destiny that I should help you on your quest? And his implication is that your quest, Terran, quest for what? Is it quest for glory? Or is it the quest for identity? Remember, we kind of began the semester, and I put up here, several questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? And I didn't put it this way, but we'll know. Where am I? Where am I going? That is this all there is, or is there something more? Okay? These are Terran's quests. This is the quest of humanity. What does it mean to be human? Who am I? Isn't just whom are my parents. It's what am I meant to be? Okay? So Gwydion says, maybe I'm here to help you discover those. Terran, what do you mean? In other words, whoosh, right over his head. He's 11 to 14 years old. He doesn't think about this stuff. Other than, who are my parents? Because it's implied. He's asked Dalbin. Okay? Gwydion, not sure. That is, I'm not sure what exactly I mean as to which of the two questions is the right one. Okay? So they meet with Gurgi, this subhuman, more than animal type creature thing. Okay? We're not told what it is. And page 24 and 25. Gwydion talks about a warrior who rescued Hinwin before from Inuven, the land that Iran is in control of. And then he mentions who the warrior was. It was Kal, son of Kalfur. And he's like, what? You mean the bald guy who farms turnips? Yep. A hero, but he's so bald. You have curious notions about heroes, like, bald people can't be heroes. Okay. So, skip that because I'm trying to do a bunch. So they meet up with Gurgi, and let's see here. They've got to cross a river, page 32, and we find out Taran doesn't know how to swim. The horse does, but Taran doesn't. Bottom of 32. Gwydion asked Taran, why didn't you tell me before we started across? Well, I was sure I could learn. How many people, think they could learn how to swim first time jumping into a river that's deeper than they're able to stand and moving faster than they're able to stand in? If Melangar hadn't sat on me, in other words, it's your horse's fault. You must learn to answer for your own folly. What does he mean?
Learn to recognize your mistakes.
Learn to recognize your mistakes. In other words, don't blame my horse. It's not my horse's fault you nearly drowned. What does he say? As for Melangar, she is wiser now than you can ever hope to become. Now, that's a little harsh, Even should you live to be man, which seems more and more unlikely. In other words, kid, you're going to die before you get to be old enough to be a man. Okay? So we find out about the Gwythaints, these birds that work for Iran and such. And Taran says, in response to Gwydion talking about them, page 34, if only they hadn't seen us. There is no use regretting what has happened. What does Taran mean, if only they hadn't seen us? What kind of statement is that? Okay, look at Gwydion's reply. No use regretting what has happened. If only those mean, rotten terrorists hadn't crashed those planes into those buildings 17 years ago. Okay? But they did crash those planes into those buildings. That's why Gwydion says, there's no use regretting what has happened. In other words, save your breath. Why? It's pointless to say that kind of thing. If only I'd tried harder. Yeah, but you didn't. If only I'd been born taller, smarter, prettier, handsomer, faster, stronger. But you weren't, so get over it. What's Gwydion's point? Deal with the reality you have, Taran. They did see us, so that means what? Now we have to be more careful. We can't act as if only the world were a different place. Why? It's not. You got to deal with the cards that are dealt, essentially. Okay? So, Gwydion goes on and tells Taran about the Cauldron-born. Cauldron-born, this is where you get a mixture between this book and the Black Cauldron in the Disney film. Cauldron-born are either living men or corpses that are thrown into the Black Cauldron, and then they come out what are called Cauldron-born. Zombies. They can't be killed. Nothing kills them. Chop their heads off, pick them back up, and they go on. Okay? The cauldron, by the way, that he's talking about, this is an aspect of Celtic mythology that Alexander pulls in from mythology. This isn't something he invents. Okay? There is this cauldron in Celtic mythology that if you go in it and come back out, you will live forever. Okay? So, he says the Cauldron-born are utterly without mercy or pity, for Iran has worked still greater evil upon them. He's destroyed the remembrance of themselves as living men. They have no memory of tears or laughter. of sorrow, or loving kindness. This is page 35. Among all Iran's deeds, this is one of the cruelest. Why? They look like men. They think like men to some extent. They act like men. But they don't have any remembrance of humanity. Okay? They don't have any of those things that say don't. Any of those internal checks and balances that say, I shouldn't do that. Okay? That's why he says it's perhaps the worst thing Iran ever does. And later, he will say, I don't remember if it's in this book or one of the others, he will say, and that's why the cauldron-born are to be pitied above all. They don't know any better. They can't help themselves for wanting to kill. Okay? So they can't be blamed, really, either. Let's go on. 37, bottom 37, bottom of 37. Gurgi wakes them up, and let's see here. Gurgi makes a noise. Terran leaps into the undergrowth, grabs at him, doesn't know that it's Gurgi, he thinks it's something else. And Gwydion says, stop, that's enough. Terran, save your life next time. Save your own life next time. In other words, Terran, by jumping into the underbrush, jumping into the thorns, thinks he's protecting Gwydion while Gwydion is asleep. Okay? I should have known a great war leader needs no help from an assistant pig keeper. Gwydion, unlike assistant pig keepers, I scorn the help of no man. Okay. Notice, Terran assumes that when Gwydion says, enough, enough, do not frighten the wits of the poor thing, out of the poor thing, that he is condemning Terran for what he's done. It's not what he's doing. He's just saying, you're going to scare Gurgi to death if you don't stop. Okay? Terran takes that to mean, oh, you don't need my help. It's not what Gwydion said. So Gwydion says, no, I scorn the help of no man. And you should know better than to jump into thorn bushes without first making sure what you will find. In other words, think before you leap. Save your anger for a better purpose. Okay? Now, Gwydion says there, your anger is what made you jump into the thorn bushes. And then he realizes, because notice the narrator says he hesitated and looked carefully at Terran. I believe you did think my life was in danger. In other words, wait, you jumped into those bushes thinking I really was in danger. You really were trying to save me. Terran, if I'd have known it was only that stupid, silly Gurgi. Gwydion, yeah, but you didn't. That's what's important. You didn't. It's almost like he goes, way to go, Terran. Why? You're actually thinking like a warrior now. How so? Did you do this for your own glory? Nope. What does a warrior think of? Somebody else, not himself. So I shall take the intention for the deed. That is, I will take your intention to save my life for the actual deed of saving my life. Did he actually save Gwydion's life? No. Gwydion's life was never in danger. But he's going to take it as if it was. Okay? You may be many things, Terran of Caradalban, but you are no coward. I offer you my thanks. And he bows deeply. When he bows deeply, what is he doing? No. Well, I mean, possibly. He's humbling himself. He's honoring Terran. This is heroic behavior. humbling himself before another, who is worthy of respect and honor. Taran never thinks of that at the beginning, in terms of heroics and warriors and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So, let's see here. They get captured by Akron, the evil witch. We find out she is gorgeous, page 46. Gwydion warns Taran about her. Says, she is Akron, she sets a trap for you, Taran. For an instant, he could not believe such beauty concealed the evil of which he had been warned. Okay? As I said, they get captured, they get separated, put in separate cells. And a little girl, 50, 51 and following, starts to make noise when Taran is down in the dungeons. And she has this little ball thing that kind of glows that she plays with, so to speak. And she rescues Taran. And she says, oh, your companion is in the cell next to you. Taran asked her to rescue him. So, pages 54 and 55. Taran asks, is Akron your mother? And she says, no, I am Eilonwy, daughter of Angered, daughter of Rhaegar, daughter of blah, 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 blah. She says, I am the blood of Lear, half-speech, the Sea King. This is the same Lear, by the way, here spelled L-L-Y-R, that later gets spelled L-E-I-R, and that Shakespeare writes about in the play King Lear. Okay? So, she's a princess. Why are you there? Taran asks her, page 55. She says, I live here. It must take a lot of explaining before you understand anything. In other words, you're really stupid, aren't you? I mean, I told you I live here, and you just asked me, why am I here? Because I told you I live here. He says, no, no, no. So Taran explains, Akron is in league with Iran of Anuva, and she goes, oh, yeah, I know that. Okay? So, I'm going to skip a bunch again. She gets Taran and the other one out, and page 60. She says, I took the horse, Melangar, from the stable. They're hidden in the woods outside the castle. It's all done now. They're waiting for you. Taran immediately thinks, okay, she's got Melangar. My companion must be Gwydion. Okay? Turns out that it's not. Let's see here. So, bottom of page 60. Taran says, Akron will know you let us escape. In other words, you will get in bad trouble if you stay. No, she won't, because she'll think I'm still locked up. She doesn't know I can get out. She can't know I was here. It's very thoughtful of you to say that. Shows a kind heart. I think that's so much more important than being clever. In other words, you're still stupid, but at least you mean well. Kind of what Gwydion has already told him. He's not a coward, but he's still kind of stupid for jumping in the thorns. Okay? So she helps Taran get out, and I'm going to skip a bunch. They go through the barrow. She grabs a sword from an old dead guy. Pages around 70 through 72. And bottom of 72. Taran helps her get out, and she says, thank you for saving my life. For an assistant pig keeper, I must say you are quite courageous. For an assistant pig keeper. Why did she say that? For an assistant pig keeper, you are quite courageous. For a farmhand.
Because he's doing more than what he's supposed to be doing.
Assistant pig keepers shouldn't be courageous, right? I mean, how hard is it? How much courage does it take to take care of pigs? Well, I mean, it depends. If it's a big old wild boar, okay, that's one thing. But it's not, okay? It's wonderful when people surprise you that way. She's saying, you are not at all what I expected you to be.
Pleasant surprise.
Yeah, pleasant surprise. Okay. So, they see the horse and the shadowy figure off in the distance in the grove. Taryn calls out, Gwydion, Gwydion. And it's not Gwydion. Chapter 9. It's Fflewddur Fflam. Fflewddur Fflam is a wannabe bard. Okay. Wannabe because he never passed his bard exam. Think of it as, a lawyer passing the bar exam. Okay, the bard exam is memorizing hundreds of tales and being able to sing them accompanied with the harp that you have. Okay? He also turns out, we find out, he's a king. He's a king of a small northern country. Okay? He's out wandering around because it's such a small northern country that people don't really realize when he's no longer there. And because he really wants to be a bard more than anything. So, we now have Fflewddur, Taryn, Eilonwy, and Gurgi together. Okay? Chapter 10. Now, we've been told Eilonwy rescued a sword. Or took, maybe not rescued is the right word, took a sword from a dead king who lay in the barrow at the bottom of the castle, the spiral castle. Castle is built on a tomb, in other words. Okay? She grabbed a sword and took it from this dead guy. And Eilonwy reads on the sword, page 86, or on the scabbard, not on the sword itself. Draw, Dyrnwyn, only thou of royal blood, to rule, to strike thee, and she says, I can't figure out the rest, it's faint, can't see it. Taryn, let me unsheath it. There might be more on the blade. She goes, no. I told you I had a symbol of power, and I'm bound by it. That's elementary. In other words, any moron understands that. Okay? He says, Ockran can't bind. It's not Ockran. I only said she had things with the same mark. This is a stronger enchantment, top of page 87. Besides, it says only royal blood can draw it. Doesn't mention a word about assistant pig keeper. What does she obviously mean? You're not royal. Pig keepers can't be royal. Royals don't do that kind of work, right? What do royals do? Nothing, pretty much. I mean, they just be royal all the time. Okay? Taryn, how can you tell I haven't royal blood? Look at me. How can you tell by looking at me, he says, that I don't have royal blood? I wasn't born an assistant pig keeper. For all you know, my father might have been a king. Happens all the time in the Book of 3. The Book of 3, that big, massive book that Dalbin reads to Taryn every now and then. But Taryn never actually reads himself. Why? Because when he touches the book, his fingers burn. Eilonwy, page 87 still. I never heard of the Book of 3. But in the first place, notice, 1, I don't think it's good enough to be a king's son or even a king himself. Royal blood is just a way of translating. In other words, that's not really what it means. In the old writing, it didn't mean only having royal relatives. Anybody can have those. It meant, I don't know what you call it, something special. It seems to me that if you have it, you don't need to wonder whether you have it. Well, we're going to find out later, it's not royal blood, it's kind of royal worth. It's not noble blood, it's noble worth. Taryn, okay, so you've made up your mind that I'm not whatever it is. That is, I don't have whatever those qualities are. I didn't mean to offend you. For an assistant pig keeper, I think you're quite remarkable. She's going to do this through all 5 books. For an assistant pig keeper, what does that always mean? For low-life scum, I really think you're great. But you're low-life scum. You're always at the bottom of the social status.
Kind of like a reality check.
Yeah, but it's her way of always kind of putting him in place. She's a princess. You're not a prince. You're down there. You're the greatest that you are for down there. You will never be more than what you are. Okay? I even think you're the nicest person I've ever met in my life. It's just that I'm forbidden to let you have the sword. Okay, then what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to keep it. He's like, okay, but then what? Taryn's thinking what about the sword? I want it. You know, what's the big debate going on, supposedly, across the country now, largely led by high school age kids, especially the ones out of Florida? Gun control. Why? Guns are evil. Guns kill people. So if I were to bring a gun in and set it down right here, it would be dangerous, right? Because it could, in and of itself, you know, stand up and the trigger pull and kill somebody. No. Guns only kill people when people are behind the guns to pull the trigger. Okay? Cars only kill people when people are behind the wheel of the car. It's idiotic when you read a newspaper account about how an SUV plowed into a bunch of people. SUVs don't do that on their own. Somebody has got to be behind the wheel of the car. Okay? We don't take away cars from people who kill people with cars, accidentally sometimes. Okay? So notice what Taryn is thinking here. Swords are meant for what? To be used. A sword in its sheath is useless. It is not fulfilling its purpose. He's thinking, you got to pull the sword out of the sheath. You got to use it. She says, I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to drop it down a well. Nice little nod kind of there to the whole Arthurian myth. Because where does Arthur get Excalibur? If you're familiar with Monty Python, you know, a watery tart who, you know, brings the sword up out of the water. Okay? So, they keep debating about it. And let's see here. Fluter, we learn a little bit about. He likes to, as he talks, what does he tend to do? You could put it very, how do I want to put this? You could describe it euphemistically, or you could describe it very cold, hard facts. Euphemistically, he likes to embellish. He's a natural-born storyteller. Okay? Put it cold, hard facts, he lies. Okay? And when he lies, what does his harp do? Strings start to break. Okay? The harp is a truthometer for him. It lets people know when he's lying because it's just sitting on his back and the strings will start to break as he starts to utter untruths. And he tells us, top of page 90, bottom of page 89, well, Ilanwi says, if you'd stop readjusting the facts quite as much, perhaps you wouldn't have trouble with that harp. Readjusting the facts. Telling untruths. And he said, well, yeah, I suppose. I try, but it's hard. Why? As king, you get into the habit. Who's going to tell the king? You're lying. You're all familiar, hopefully, if you're not, your education has been woefully inadequate, of the fairy tale, so to speak, or the tale of the emperor with no clothes. It's the little kid, right, who tells the emperor, what the hell, man, you're walking around naked. And the emperor's like, no, I'm not. No, you're naked. And everybody kind of goes, look. Okay? Because the emperor, everybody's what? Or king, afraid of. So he says, so I get into the habit. I can say what I want, and everybody's like, yes, sir, sir. So, Taryn, bottom of page 90. They're trying to figure out what to do. Taryn's thinking, I got to go find Gwydion, etc. He's thinking what Gwydion told him about the Horn King. And he says, there is no doubt in my mind the sons of Don must have news of the uprising before the Horn King strikes. If he triumphs, the Horn King, Iran will have Prydain by the throat. I've seen with my own eyes what that means. That is, I've seen the cauldron born. He felt ill at ease, speaking as if he himself were a war leader in a council hall, but soon the words began to come easier. Notice, speaking like he's a war leader in a council hall. Okay, you have Taryn, Fluter, Eilonwy, Gurgi. They're not in a hall, they're out in the wild. But Taryn kind of is the leader of this group. Fluter Flam's a lot older than Taryn. He's in his 20s or early 30s. Okay? Eilonwy is about the same age, somewhere between 11 and 14. Gurgi, we have no idea. Okay? So Fluter says, all right, you shall keep looking for the pig. If you want me to warn the warriors of Don, I'll go. Taryn, no, that's not what I mean. I shall journey to Caer-Dathel myself. Danger is too great. I ask no one to face it in my stead. Is he thinking, and by doing so, I will earn great? Nope. He's thinking, I'm not going to ask you or Eilonwy or Gurgi to put yourselves in danger. I'll do it. Okay? It's a mark of humility again. Taryn says, my quest must be given up. What's his quest? Is it this? Not short term. This is long term. Short term, it's find a pig. Find Henwin. He says, I've got to stop that. Why? I need to let Gwydion's father, the High King, know what's going on. Okay? Until then, I serve only Gwydion. It was I who cost him. He thinks Gwydion's dead. And it is justice for me to do what I believe he would have done. Okay? So, they have the flight through the hills. And we're told, page 96, so we'll get a little bit farther than I'd hoped. In Caer-Dallben, at the top of the page, in Caer-Dallben, he had dreamed of being a hero. But dreaming, he had come to learn, was easy. And at Caer-Dallben, no lives depended on his judgment. Why? All dreams, all fantasy land. Now, he longed for Gwydion's strength and guidance. His own strength, he feared, was not equal to his task. We'll go back to the author's note. What did he say? Our capabilities seldom match our aspirations. He doesn't think he has inside him what is needed to what? Fulfill his task. But he's going to try anyways. Okay? So they try to outrun the cauldron born. And we're going to skip a bunch. Let's see here. Go on to now we can skip that. Go on to the chapter, The Hidden Valley. They make their way into this valley, and Taryn recognizes, page 116, Dallben's chickens. And they meet and talk with Medwin, how you pronounce his name, or Medwin if you want. And page 118. Medwin, Taryn saw, had gardens of both flowers and vegetables behind the cottage. To his surprise, Taryn found himself yearning to work with Coll in his own vegetable plot. The weeding and hoeing he had so despised at Caradalbin now seemed, as he thought of his past journey and the journey yet to come, infinitely pleasant. In other words, Taran is one who suffers that age-old problem of the grass is always greener on the other side. He never wants what he has. He always wants something else. Now that he has adventure, he doesn't want adventure. He wants what he had before. Okay? So, he talks with Medwin, page 119, and Medwin says, every living thing deserves our respect, be it humble or proud, ugly or beautiful. Taran, not the Gwithaints, not those birds. Medwin, I feel sorry for those unhappy creatures. He talks about how once, long ago, they were what? Regular birds. And what happened? Aran took them and he twisted them. The tortures he inflicted on the Gwithaints were shameful and unspeakable. Now they serve him out of terror. Okay? We will stop there and we'll pick up with page 120 on Wednesday. Expect a quiz on Wednesday, probably over the whole thing.